Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
This is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association Southern Tasmania, with our restart of our DATV Experimenters Night. And apologies for the audio issue that we were experiencing just earlier. I have Rex, VK7MO, in the studio, Evening Rex, and Andrew Klekocuik as well, from the Antarctic Division.
Thanks, Justin.
We'll find out why Rex and Andrew are in the studio in a sec. We'll just start by acknowledging the acknowledgement of country. I wish to acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the knowledge and the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Tasmania. Now, Rex, tell us why you've come to the studio.
Right. Well, thank you, Justin. You will recall I've talked about auroral propagation in the past.
Definitely.
And essentially, we've discovered by doing our auroral propagation that there seems to be a different sort of propagation. So we'll start the next slide by just going back on auroral propagation, and this is auroral propagation back in 29th of March, and on the left slide you can see a whole lot of dots which represents D codes in Q6515C, and they are all coming in with a Doppler shift of somewhere between 350 and almost 500 hertz.
Okay.
When there's an aurora, the aurora has to be sufficiently high to be seen by both myself and the station in Victoria, VK3MAP, and Andrew will just explain how we can establish that.
Yeah, thanks, Rex. Yeah, so I've been looking at where the aurora is using a forecast from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration called Ovation. That's available online. You can go and look that one up. And it provides a gridded estimate of where the auroral oval is. So that's the region where the aurora is visible, centred on the magnetic poles. And that's using actual observations from a satellite at the L1 Lagrange point, which is measuring the solar wind parameters.
Okay.
It's about a 40-minute lead time before the solar wind influences the magnetic field.
Okay.
at the Earth, and so that provides a really nice way of actually basing an estimate of the auroral location on real observations. I take that data and I've compared it with satellite observations to verify that the oval is actually where it is forecast to be,
Okay.
and then worked out basically where the nearest edge would be visible, and then use some spherical trigonometry to work out what height in the sky we might see the aurora, and that's based on in this case, an altitude of about 120 kilometres, which seems to give us a good match between when the aurora is visible and when we're getting backscatter.
Okay.
So that plot's based on real observations there, and we were able to generate that for each of the events we're looking at. And so the plot there in blue, that's the elevation in the sky of the nearest auroral oval edges seen by Rex.
Yep.
And the orange is by Brody, VK7 MAP. And Brody's further north, so the aurora is lower in the sky.
Okay.
But as Rex mentioned, we basically have found that to see this D code, the Q6515C, as Rex transmits, Brody decodes when the aurora's above his horizon, as
Okay.
well as Rex's, of course. So that all seems to work out pretty reasonably well.
Okay.
On that plot you can see a vertical dotted line. That's the time of magnetic midnight. That's when the auroral oval should be furthest north in the southern hemisphere, and that kind of matches when the aurora is highest in the sky. In this particular example, it's a fairly general thing, but seems to match pretty well.
And is that the most intense intensity of the aurora that we would see at that point?
It can be. Yeah, during an active auroral time, there are bursts of energy called substorms, and substorms can start pretty much at any time during the day or night, but they tend to be most intense around magnetic midnight.
Okay.
Because we're seeing at that time essentially looking into the tail of the Earth's magnetic field where the energy is flowing up from the solar wind.
Okay.
Solar wind flows past us and compresses the tail and pumps bursts of energy up the tail, and tend to occur around magnetic midnight. So
Okay.
tends to be that way.
And fill our atmosphere with electrons, which causes us issues. Cool.
Okay, next slide. Now this is another example, just to give you a view of how variable auroral backscatter can be. In this case, this is a composite of something that actually started on the 23rd and then went to the 24th, and we moved the 24th back so that it was in the right time sequence.
Okay.
It started off with a positive Doppler, which is what one has found is always happens prior to magnetic midnight, and then after it, generally a negative Doppler of the order of 200 to 400 Hertz positive, and then going to sort of anywhere between 100 and 400 Hertz negative after magnetic midnight. So we know this is a characteristic of auroral scatter, and if we go to the next slide, this is an example where the scale in Hertz of the Doppler is now only between plus or minus 30 or 40 Hertz.
Yep.
So all of the Doppler shift is much lower, and there's a period here where we've got signals on both 2 meters and 6 meters, 6 meters in red, and they were fairly consistent. 2 meters started about an hour earlier, which is we can't explain, but aside from this fairly continuous period, there's a whole lot of little random dots which are pretty certainly meteor pings.
On 6 meters.
On 6 meters, a couple of blue dots there.
Just here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might be getting the odd meteor ping. To get a decode, even with AP, you need at least 5 to 10 seconds in the 15 seconds and one of the advantages of 6 metres is meteor pings tend to be much longer and and reflect much stronger signals.
Okay.
So we've got a combination of meteor pings and something else which we are pretty sure is sporadic-E backscatter. Now, to track this down, we have to the right Andrew's diagram, which shows that the aurora only got up to 1 or 2 degrees at my place and didn't get it anywhere near the horizon at Brodie's place, so we wouldn't expect aurora. As well, when we go down to the chart at the bottom, the KP index, which is a measure of auroral activity, was way down at 2, and we normally need something like 5 to get propagation from the aurora that extends up to Brodie's latitude.
Now, was this Australian KP index?
This is the Australian KP index.
Okay, because that was a bit of a... I remember that
That's
from our
right.
last... There was a bit of a difference.
Between the NOAA KP index, which always seems more optimistic.
Yeah.
Everything's bigger in the US.
Yeah. So,
But
Okay.
that extra line in that plot on the right, that's the Hobart magnetometer. That reddish line in the middle,
Yep.
which is an additional add-in. Now that I've been working a bit further along with Rex, that shows the magnetic field was actually fairly quiet. A little bit of a bump around magnetic midnight, but it certainly wasn't active, and certainly not as active as it was in the 23-24 March period.
So where in that 23-24, when it was a lot more active, that line is varying a lot more?
Quite a lot more. In fact, we haven't got it on the plot there, but it's varying pretty much on that scale.
Okay.
Right across the scale.
Yeah, okay. All right.
now, one of the reasons we're pretty sure it was backscatter is I turned my beam direct to Brodie and I lost the signal completely.
Okay, that's a good test.
We now go to the next slide.
Yep.
This is the signal we got on the following day. So the previous one we showed you was on the 19th.
Okay.
This is the 20th and the 21st. And it is interesting that there was evidence of it on 6 metres only, not on 2 metres.
Okay.
On the 20th, and a little bit of evidence when you analyse the grouping of dots on the 21st.
Yep.
Of continuous signals, but they're continuous over just a very short period. So whatever it was causing this seemed to be having some impact on what was happening in the ionosphere.
And only there for a short period of time.
Yes.
Whatever it was. Okay.
For 3 days.
Yep.
Now,
And again, those plots on the right show that the magnetic field was very quiet, and the aurora probably wasn't very high in the sky when it did appear, which would have been after magnetic midnight generally, and generally not in the time when we're seeing those decodes there.
Okay.
Okay. The next slide, which is a big hint, is this is the ionoson data from Hobart on the 19th, when the signals were stronger and got right up to 2 metres. And you can see the ionosphere has a reflection just above 100 kilometres, which is a normal E layer, which is quite strong, but it was sufficiently strong that it was then bouncing back to the ground and then bouncing up again and producing another reflection at twice that and 3 times that and possibly even 4 times that.
Squint.
So, and this really means it's a very strong E layer that can do 4 bounces.
Hence sporadic. Your prediction is sporadic-E.
That's why we are pretty sure it's sporadic-E.
Okay. Wow.
Now,
Okay.
we'll go to the next slide. Now, another characteristic of sporadic-E is the spreading. Signal spreads on backscatter, but not on forward scatter. Actually, only about 2 days ago, there was a very strong forward scatter on 6 metres across the ZL, and I got the ZL to just transmit a single tone.
Okay.
And you can see there's no spreading at all of that signal. It does tend to have a slight thickening and a narrowing, which coincides with the amplitude of the signal, which is a function of the way Spectrum Lab seems to react to
Okay.
strong signals rather than real spreading.
Okay.
But the right-hand one was the actual. I transmitted and Brody received a single tone spread all over the place on 6 metres. Now, when I say spread all over the place, it's centred on 1,000 hertz, which is what I transmitted.
Okay.
But it's only spread probably 15 or 20 hertz.
Okay.
There is a small meteor ping in the middle of it there.
Is that line?
That line,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
But compared to forward scatter, a very good hint of backscatter is the spreading of the signal, which
Wow. Okay.
hams generally are well aware of.
Yeah. Okay.
So, next slide. The characteristics of the various modes are auroral backscatter, plus or minus 500 hertz Doppler offset, primarily between before and after magnetic midnight, and Doppler spreading of, well, sometimes as low as 100 hertz, but generally a few hundred hertz.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we go, this is on 2 metres, then we go to look at auroral to sporadic-E backscatter.
Yep.
We didn't actually make a single tone measurement on 2 metres, so all we can do is assume that it would be about 3 times that on 6 metres.
Yeah.
There's no offset at all on the sporadic-E backscatter, and about 60 hertz spreading on 2 metres. And when we have meteors, they're very random and they can be plus or minus about 30 hertz. So there's quite different characteristics between the 3 modes of propagation, auroral, backscatter or meteors.
And quite easy to tell the difference.
And quite easy to tell the difference. And then 6 metres, essentially, we estimate there was a factor of 3 roughly difference.
Okay.
Next slide. Other characteristics, for auroral scatter, we need a KP index of at least 5. It's typically best around midnight, and propagation is reasonably continuous, but on 2 metres it does miss some decodes. 6 metres we haven't been able to test yet, but we're now doing tests, in fact even tonight, on 6 and 2.
It's happening.
I don't know whether it really will happen, but at least we're trying.
Okay.
Suspected sporadic-E backscatter. Some of this may relate to CMEs. At about the time we got this, even though the CMEs didn't produce aurora, there were a couple of CMEs.
There was still energy coming our way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And meteor scatter, just random Q65 decodes, which occasionally are strong enough on each band.
Okay.
I guess with the sporadic-E, we don't tend to see it at this time of year, typically, do we?
And we don't, which is something that is a bit surprising.
Well, winter.
Yeah, and I've been seeing it. I look for meteors at 6 metres using VK7 RAE.
Yep.
and I've been seeing sporadic-E as well
Okay.
on the forward scatter.
Okay.
The other thing that I guess when you get some electrons, energizing the E region, you can get sporadic E along with meteor. If there's a meteor shower, there's some evidence of that, I think, as well.
Okay.
And it also may relate to the temperature of that region as well. If it's unusually cool, that tends to favour.
I was going to comment. There's a
sporadic-E.
climate change issue here,
Well,
but hang on,
there
it's the
is.
reverse.
Well, there is, because the upper atmosphere is actually cooling in response to climate change.
Okay. Yes.
It's the CO2 allows heat to escape at the top of the atmosphere and actually cools the top of the atmosphere.
Okay.
But sporadic-E is still a very active field of research, and there's not really a very clear picture of how it forms, and there aren't any models necessarily that even predict it very well.
So there's not that much research being done.
No,
That's
and this is where amateurs really can make a difference.
Mm,
It's actually
true.
seeing these sort of things and
True.
keeping track. And I know the folks that, say, for example, are involved in Whisper and some of the other modes are making a contribution to this.
Oh yeah, no, I've got 3 frequencies of whisper going on right at the moment.
Right.
So it's and I didn't mention, given we did a restart, this is Andrew's contribution is very much atmospheric physics. That's Andrew's and.
Yeah, my interest, well, it goes back to my hobby days, mucking around the backyard, and I still do that now.
Okay.
I'm still interested in how the environment works and sensing different things. But
Very impressive all-sky camera.
Yes.
muck around with
Which is
it, and,
available on the
uh,
web for people to look at.
Yeah, on the web, and of course I use that, compare with the meteor scatter and a few other things, and maybe at some stage I'll give you an update on what I'm doing there. But
Great.
just interested how things work, and it relates to the research we're doing at the Antarctic Division.
Yeah, and it's that combination of the amateur side and also the I suppose the more professional atmospheric physics side, and being able to correlate and contribute to that knowledge base is fantastic.
And these days with consumer, electronics, SDRs, you can set something up to monitor this in next to no time and actually have something, collecting data and then combine it together with other folks.
And the net is a wonderful thing for this sort of thing. And I point to WhisperNet, where all of that data goes to a central point, which is fantastic. The other comment I was going to make, Rex, is I'm having a bit of a deja vu moment here, because you remember when we were doing optical.
Yes.
And we had these wonderful clouds between me and Rex, and we were pointing, red lights at these clouds, and we had a variety of sensors picking up signals using WSJT.
Yes.
And then the next night, there were no clouds, but we were still getting signals.
Right. Okay.
And that confused us, I think, initially, and we sort of went, well, okay, hang on, I'm looking more into it.
At this wavelength, even dust particles
correct.
will scatter signals.
Yeah, subvisual clouds, they're quite a hot topic at the moment.
Are they?
Yeah, because they're the ones that actually cause warming potentially of the surface as well, even though they're very, very thin.
Okay.
So there's a lot of interest in detecting those. So you can't often see them. Need a LiDAR often to really.
This
do
isn't
them.
the noctilucent type
No,
clouds.
these are the ones that
crystal.
are actually at the tropopause. So they're near the cold point,
Okay.
between the troposphere and the stratosphere, about 10, 15 kilometres up.
Okay.
But it's quite cold there, and you'll get, ice crystals forming, but not thick enough to be obvious. You might go out and see a bit of a haze in the sky,
Yeah.
but not the fluffy white clouds, and could well be
Okay.
dropping loads of it.
Well, something you can bounce a signal off.
Yeah.
Well and truly.
Okay, we'll just move on to the last slide. Our conclusions are we do need more tests because effectively we saw this effect over 3 nights, but it seemed like it was probably all related
Okay.
on those 3 nights. So we need to see it again.
So you've only been this is the only 3 nights you have actually been monitoring. Is that, or have you been monitoring
no,
for longer?
we've been we haven't done a lot more monitoring of
Okay.
that where we've been on 6 metres.
Okay.
And of those 3 nights, we only saw both bands the first night,
Yeah.
and it was only 6 metres. So
Okay.
I don't think we've really explored how often this might happen
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
So a lot more testing is required, but one of the advantages of this sort of mode is you can set it up and you transmit it all night and just come back and
Let it
all
go.
the data is sitting there.
I love it.
Whereas if you were doing this, calling CQ on sideband and waiting for it, it wouldn't happen.
Exactly right.
And we've also offered advice that allows one to identify the propagation modes, which
That's
we think
right.
is useful.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, Justin.
Well, thank you. And as I usually finish off these segments, I look forward to the next instalment.
I'm sure there will be another one.
Oh, no, well and truly, and absolutely fascinating the auroral propagation to start with, and then this is just really extending it. So yeah, and it sounds as if from your comments, Andrew, that there isn't that large body of research in the sporadic-E area.
There's
So
still room for discoveries here, I think. So.
yeah, okay, and that's certainly we rely on sporadic-E for longer distance 6 metre and VHF type contacts.
Yes.
So yeah, fantastic. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, thank you.
Thanks.
And apologies again for the audio issue. I've been monitoring this, and we've been going out with wonderful audio for that whole time. So we have resolved that particular issue. So fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. So we'll just do a bit of a reset of the studio, and we'll be right back with a few small items, and give you a tour of the new studio. So we've just got to set a few things up. So we'll be right back. This is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night. Okay, this is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night. There we go. And welcome back to the studio. And we're just double checking we've got audio. We have. All right. Now, I just thought I would very quickly just do a bit of a presentation. Quick presentation to give you a look at this 3D printed case for the IC705. There was a comment, I think, by one of our ZL viewers, actually ZL viewers who came along to the Tassie Ham convention, and so wanted to see a little bit more about this 3D printed case. So let's just try. Okay, now let's go out here. If I do that, okay. So this is a design by a Swedish, I think it was a Swedish guy who put it up on Thingiverse for the IC705 case. It comes in multiple parts. I'll go through each of the parts. There is. I'll just take the top off. Now there is the main frame of this, which has the handles. The handles are very handy because they protect the knobs. This is one print, so the line there is where it prints to, and you can see it wraps around. There's some holes in the bottom here that screw into the IC705, and then there's the quarter-inch Whitworth screw hole here. So you can put it on a tripod if you really want to. You need a fairly long screw for that, but anyway, but you can see the line there that goes through there. And then, so that's one part of the print. Then there is a second part of the print, which is this back frame. So this back frame goes around. You can see that's the battery. There are some lines here that they put in. There's no breathing in the case or anything, so these lines are really just cosmetic rather than anything else. But that's the second part of the print, and you glue these two together, and you can see the holes at the end let you get to the connectors and the power connector, and then up this end is the antenna connector and the microphone, and etc, etc. So it lets you get to all of these through the side. The second part of the third part of the print is the top shell, and that's a hole. It prints with a hole in the front of it. There is a fourth part of the print, which is this panel in here that you glue in, and that provides the little indentation. There is a fifth part of the print, which is this one here that you glue on, and then there is a sixth part of the print, which is the other end of this. The other end, I've just put a hole in here and I've tapped it, and that goes in there. And so this goes underneath the handle. You push it in, and then you screw this up until and that makes the cover secure. And I don't have to worry about, when I put that in the pack, damaging the screen or the knobs or anything like that. I've taken this to a number of solder activations and not have to worry about damaging the 705. Now, a couple of weeks ago I showed you this. Last week I showed you this. This was printed by Ron, VK7WRC. Originally it comes with a panel that has IC705 printed in it. I'd never put that on to this particular case because I thought, well, if I can work out how to print my name, my call sign, then I'll do that. Ron graciously did that for me, and I stuck this in. I did a little bit of white paint around the side to give it a little bit of highlight, and Ron did it. This is in PLA. The actual case is done in ABS. And I made it specifically, I actually requested that it gets done in high-vis orange because I thought if I am ever out on a solder activation and I drop this anywhere, I can, it's high-vis, I can actually see it and be able to hopefully go back and pick it up if heaven forbid I ever dropped it. But anyway, that's the IC705 case. It's certainly it's light. It's very light. It doesn't add very much weight to the IC705. It does make it a little bit more bulky, but I think that's a fair trade-off for the ability to actually protect the 705. So that's the 705 case for our ZL viewer. Now I understand that this case is no longer available on Thingiverse, and I'm not quite sure why. I supplied the STL files to Ron for him to be able to print the yellow one that you saw last time, and he also has printed one for another 705 owner. So for JDZ, FICO5 JDZ, and so I can certainly pass on the STL files if people want them. But yeah, at this stage I don't think it's available on Thingiverse anymore, and I'm not quite sure why. So I'll maybe do a little bit more, research on that. But anyway, now what I do want to do now though is go to somewhere. There we go. I just want to go to. This is, and it's another camera which the white balance is not quite right on. I just want to give you a very quick tour of the new studio. I'm sitting at the desk right at the moment. This is our presentation desk that you saw. Andrew and Rex were sitting here. This is you can see this is our presentation. This is where we had the PowerPoint presentation coming from. That goes through a converter box into the video chain. You can see this is the outside broadcast. OBS. This is Open Broadcast Studio. For those gamers out there, they'll recognise this. OBS is used by a lot of gamers to be able to stream their games online. You can set up a whole lot of scenes. You can set up a whole lot of sources. A shout out to Sean VK7WTF, who went to all of the trouble of putting the SDI card into the OBS PC. So we feed OBS through an SDI stream. SDI is just the digital standard digital interface. All of the audio, video, and any control signals go down exactly the same digital path. So this enables us, and this is what we're streaming out on to YouTube. So it's set up. You can see there's a test pattern there. I can transition to that. With the test pattern, we can zoom back. I can do the intro, all the intros now on the PC. The other things that are on this desk, one of them is there is a Pelco controller, CCTV camera controller, just here. If I go to, there we go. It is that is the camera that's in the studio. And we can zoom around here. You can, if we zoom into, you can see we've got. There's our video that's showing all of our presentation there in the control studio. This enables us to control that. There's Hayden VK7HH. From Ham Radio DX, who's there with his Smoking Ape hoodie on. Fantastic, love it. So that enables us to do a much better presentation around the there's Harry Harry waving to us. So that gives us the presentation camera that we've got there. So now let's go to we'll just go to, here we go, back to here. So there is also the audio and video mixer. It's a Panasonic MX70 AG MX70 DR. It's got an SDI interface in it. So this gives us the ability to do effects. We'll probably put some chroma key images behind us in the not too distant future. You can see all of the green screen here. There's a rack below that has SDI, analog to SDI converters, and also video distribution amplifiers, and also an audio distribution amplifier. There is also a thing called a multi-view. Now, if I go over here and I zoom over to the wall here and show you, there is what I am looking at when I sit at the desk, and you can see there, hello, you can see one of our original cameras, Cam 1, sitting there. But what we're also seeing is the multi-view gives us the ability for all of our video inputs and or any audio inputs actually as well, if we want to do that, to go up on the screen so that we can see what we're switching to and from. So this is the multi-view that is in use right at the moment, so we can get a view of all of the audio and video inputs that we're actually taking into the studio. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm sitting at the desk, and the desk is off to my right. There are currently two cameras. You can see one of them there on an azimuth and elevation mount, and then there is another camera over here which is a fixed one that we can zoom and focus and a few other bits and pieces, but that's a fixed camera. These are being replaced with ASL fully zoom X CCTV cameras in the fullness of time. So yeah, that's a bit of a. You can see. This is our studio. This is we're not talking about a very big space here, but anyway. Oh, and the other thing is our Elmo, which is our close-up camera. This is where I was showing the now let me go to. This is where I was showing our the close-up of this. We can zoom right in on something very very close, and if we then do you can actually see the 3D printed thing on there. So there you go. There's my fingernail. So we can zoom in right in there on the Elmo camera. So that's what we've got the Elmo camera for. So we can show things up close and personal. So anyway, that's our let me go to there. That's our revised studio. It's a right at the moment it's a hybrid SDI and composite studio. Everything that's fed into OBS is now going through the SDI interface, which provides, hopefully, I hope you see a much crisper image and a much more high quality image. So that's our show for tonight. And apologies again for the for the audio issues that we had earlier. I now have a fix for those. I thought we fixed it before, but we obviously didn't. But anyway, them's the breaks. So that's our show for tonight. This has been VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night, and we get underway. Actually, no, we don't get underway next week. We actually have our presentation night next week, and a reminder to people, we have Peter Schrader, VK4EA, who is a WIA Director, Wireless Institute of Australia Director, who will be giving us a bit of a presentation on what the WIA is and does, and then open it up for questions and answers. It will be streamed. There will be a chat channel, so you can ask questions through the chat channel if you don't want to come up, but I encourage people to come up and have a chat with Peter in person. we will be going out on streaming, and we will be going out on RF. So please come along and see what the WIA is all about and what they get up to and what they're up to right at the moment. So this has been VK7 Tango Whiskey, Justin, and we'll catch you in a fortnight's time for our next DATV night, and in the interim we'll be at the presentation night for the WIA next Wednesday night from 7:30 PM. So 73, and we'll catch you next time.